The San Francisco 49ers. So a pretty tough year for them, especially in regards to the injuries that they had to deal with. And I think that kind of showed in my betting record for them. So I actually ended up, I think, probably going to be the only team for the whole NFL that I was under 500 on, 20 and 21. I haven't gotten through all of them yet, so don't hold me to that. But yeah, not great. Still not awful in terms of strong bets. I was still 8-5, so I'm not super worried about it. But I think a lot of it had to do with the injuries they went through, and probably just this division in general. Outside of the Seahawks, who I was really on them. I did kind of struggle with a bit to kind of go through who was good and who wasn't. So yeah. Anyway, position by position, how their players did, what they have on roster going to the offseason. So quarterback first, and they ain't got much. Jimmy G's he's just bad. And I was talking about that again, I didn't have the YouTube channel then, but before the year, going into the year, he was one of the first quarterbacks I did kind of real film study on. And I was like, wow, he sucks. And do I, I always have to say is, do I hate him as a fucking person or whatever? No, of course not. But he's just not very good, and that really showed, I think, this year. And people are going to say that it's the injuries, and when he's healthy, he's fine. That's just not true. He is super propped up by Kyle Shanahan during the season. He's just incapable of reading defenses, and I mean, like, actually incapable. I don't even think he bothers. My theory with him is that he just doesn't even look. He just doesn't care. He says, I'm going to throw this route to this player, specifically George Kittle, 90% of the time, over the middle. And if there's a defender waiting there to intercept it, then there's a defender waiting there to intercept it. But and what that creates is that when there's not one there, it's like it looks like he's being really decisive and he knows exactly what he's doing. But I just don't think that's what's happening, and it's pretty clear if you watch any significant number of snaps that he's just kind of winging it, or the opposite. Actually, I suppose he's only doing one thing, and he already decided what it was before the play started. So yeah, they really need to move away from him. Good thing their contract, he's a contract's easy to move, but there's a reason they're talking about Deshaun Watson or Kirk Cousins or whoever at quarterback, and it's not because of Jimmy G's injuries. It's because he's just bad. Other than him, though, C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, again, bad. Nick Mullins especially. I mean, for him to try to turn the ball over as much as he does in a Kyle Shanahan system is frankly, should be impossible, really, for an offense that's so structured around making the job easy for the quarterback. For him still to be that bad really doesn't look good. And they don't. It's really CJ Beathard's the same thing, but probably worse. Nick Mullins, at least, you're gonna get some production from his, I wouldn't say positive plays, but his ability to execute the Shanahan offense to a point. CJ Beathard just barely doesn't. He doesn't even really cover that. So yeah, they're really struggling at quarterback, and they need something there. And listen, the bar for them to get good there isn't too high. I mean, if they got Kirk Cousins or something like that, they would go way up as an offense immediately, way up. Listen, Kirk Cousins is a lot better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but yeah. So then we talk about the running backs, and they're probably fine. Are they great? No, they are missing that superstar. But I would actually argue that Raheem Mostert's just about as useful as any of those guys. He's probably the fastest running back in the NFL, or at least he's top 3, and for him to put that in a package, it's not just, one of these like return specialist, like 5th running back type guys that's barely on the roster. As a legitimately good NFL running back, he's really useful. And if he stays healthy, I think their offense looks a lot better. Again, he's one of the few running backs that actually matters just because of how fast he is, and he can competently run through holes, especially down the field. So yeah, they're fine there. Jarrett McKinnon not returning, and that's fine. They kept him around for 2 years doing nothing, injured, and that probably did end up, it looks like, sapping some of his athleticism because he didn't look great when he was on the field. Now, was he bad? No, and I do think he's worthy of being on a roster somewhere else, but not a big loss. Tevin Coleman, again, injuries. He's fine. If they bring him back, his contract's a little heavy, I know, but he can execute their offense well. I actually think he gets a little underrated in terms of his like elusiveness. For example, I think he's like a better version of, say, Leonard Fournette or something like that, because while he is more of a bruising downhill guy, he can actually at least show some shake, and I think he's faster in a straight line too. Maybe not over a full 99 yards, but over the first 20. So yeah, and then Jeff Wilson. I don't think Jeff Wilson's very good. He tries hard, and he's not a disaster. Like, he'll always move forward, and when you put him in a offense like they have with the good offensive line that we'll get to, that's how he puts up numbers like he does. But really, his production's completely replaceable. But overall, with running back, they're fine as long as they have Raheem Mostert going to next year, and they'll figure out stuff with. I should mention JaMychal Hasty too, who got snaps at the end of the year, and I think he could provide every ounce of production than anyone else on this roster does if they were to give him a lot more snaps. So they'll be fine there. At receiver, they're set. I mean, wow. They literally found the most perfect receivers they could for Shanahan's offense between Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Really, really, really good. They both, because not only are they both really positive value guys after the catch, which is a lot of what Shanahan wants from his receivers, they're both like legitimate NFL guys. Like they can create separation on routes one-on-one that isn't necessarily expected in the flow of the offense, which is a really big deal. And especially, again, if they had a better quarterback who's able to take advantage of that, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, I mean, they're both the real deal. And Deebo Samuel started this year too, so that really hurt them because he's a legit star in this league, no question. So other than that, I think they're fine too. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, I got a lot of respect for him. He actually, as far as a short yardage receiver, is one of the better ones in the NFL. Now he can have some notable drops for some reason because his hands are really good when he's actually contested, but when he's open, I don't know what happens if it's a concentration thing. He will drop some, but that guy creates separation short and knows what he's doing, like getting around the goal line. And he can block too. Like he's a really useful player to have for them. Richie James as well. I want to mention, I think he's pretty good. Thought that last year too. He fits in the type of guy who creates separation with his quickness and agility. Now he does lack a little bit in other areas. His after the catch isn't great, and he doesn't necessarily beat like tight press coverage very well, but you always need that, and especially in Shanahan offense. I definitely think at the skill positions overall, 49ers are fine. I should mention tight end George Kittle, clearly best tight end in the NFL. Travis Kelce is clearly number 2, but George Kittle, he's legitimately dominant as a blocker. He's like Brian Gronkowski effectively, and no one comes close to him really. And Jordan Reed they found was useful too. I mean, he wasn't great, and he was injured himself, but he did show enough for me to be pretty convinced that if they were to bring him back as their tight end too, they'd be fine. Ross Dwelly, he's really replaceable. He's not very good, but overall, with the skill positions, they just stay healthy and get a better quarterback. I mean, you're talking about a return to the best offense in football, probably, or top 3 for sure. Offensive line-wise, one big question is Trent Williams coming back. He played outstanding, like better than outstanding, especially given he took last year off at tackle, and they need him, I would argue, because while they did make the Super Bowl with backup tackles a couple of years ago, he is so much better than what they had, and they kind of got through on a bad schedule during that year too. So, yeah, I think they should try everything they can to bring Trent Williams back. But I will say there's some veterans tackles that in this scheme I think they could probably plug in and not be a disaster. They just don't want to run Justin School out there again because you saw that his shortcomings got covered up 2 years ago when they made the Super Bowl by a really good offense and again kind of weak schedule that they ended up playing. This year, with tougher guys that he was going against, he really did struggle, and I think that's what you'd be getting a lot more of going forward. Mike McGlinchey, though, they're set there. He can have some trouble with elite players in pass protection, but so does everyone except for the top 2-3 tackles in football. So I wouldn't be worried about him at all, and he especially as a run blocker, really fits in with what they do. So Mike McGlinchey, yeah, you're probably set there, and I think at left tackle you wanted to bring Trent Williams back, but if it's a replacement level guy who comes in who just doesn't suck, you're probably going to be fine there too with the way they run their offense. So their other offensive linemen ran through a whole lot of guys this year. Weston Richburg is the first one I talk about. He missed the whole year, and that's a shame. He is really good, and they did miss him because there are other centers that they were throwing out there, whether it was Ben Garland at the beginning of the year or Fronis Grasu, are really bad, especially Grassi. He kind of fits like Mason Cole I talked about with the Cardinals. He's just too weak to function on an NFL field. So they do need a center help, especially I don't know if Rich Reed's going to be back given the injuries he's gone through, not just this year but previously too. At guard, I mean, Laken Tomlinson, you're more than set there. He's getting a little bit older at this point, and he does still have some flashes of losses, but you're not going to do much better than him without going through a lot of work. So you're fine there. In their other spot, I mean, I would argue that, well, there's Daniel Brunskill. They moved Justin School to guard. They draft someone, in the 4th round. They're probably going to be fine. Colt McKivitz even was okay when he played. He didn't show me anything that I was like, wow, he can't be on an NFL field, which as a rookie, whatever, 5th round offensive line rookie is probably all you can ask for. So I think they're going to be able to figure that out. And overall, they just need to get a better quarterback, and they're going to be right back at the top of the league for sure. At least that's their offensive outlook. So Then as for the defense, so they're even worse on the injury front, really. You went from one of the best defenses, especially defensive fronts in the NFL, to one of the most mediocre. Now, that wasn't just injuries, unfortunately, for the 49ers. There was some real talent drain, too. I'm not the biggest fan of DeForest Buckner, but he's still a top, 10 guy at his position, and losing him did show a whole lot of weaknesses, and they really leaned into this, like, combo 4-3 end slash 5 technique defensive tackle type guy, and signed about 10 of them to the roster. The problem is only like 2 of them were good, and that really showed because when you take away the strength on the interior and replace it with just a rookie, which I'll get to, and just throw a bunch of guys who aren't strong enough to be defending the interior and aren't good enough pass rushers to be doing anything else useful, you just kind of get a mediocre front at best, and that's really what happened to the 49ers this year. So specifically, Ark Armstead, I've come around on him. At first, I wasn't a huge fan even after his breakout year 2 years ago, but I definitely changed my tune on that. I think he's a legitimately useful player and consistently does create defensive stops in the backfield, whether that's through pass rush or even as a run defender, especially maybe as an edge run defender. I think he's really, really good and probably underrated in that area. So they got some there for sure, and I think his contract did end up not being a mistake, which I probably thought it was at the time he signed it. But other than that, I mean, they found something in Kerry Hyder, who's a really good player. I thought he was good too. I think teams like the Lions let go of him way too quickly. Granted, he went through some injury stuff, but yeah, Kerry Hyder, they definitely got some in him. I hope he comes back there because he fits really well in their scheme, and he showed that he's more than capable of not just being in an NFL rotation, but being a main part of one. Because despite again the weaknesses on defense that he had to compete with around him, he was really good. So yeah, other than that though, I mean, they tried out Ziggy Ansah, who I actually think was hurt effectively the whole year, Deion Jordan, Kentavious Street, all those guys, Solomon Thomas. None of them are good, and those weaknesses show. Now Solomon Thomas, I will give. He can do, like, when surrounded by elite talent, he can do a little bit, but you know who that sounds like? It sounds like every other reasonable NFL defender in the league. So I don't think he should be coming back, or really he has a place in the future of the NFL as a relevant defender. Yeah, like I said, Kentavious Street, he did maybe a little bit more than that. I don't hate him as a player, who belongs in the NFL, but is he actually useful? Should he be playing major snaps for any team? No. They did miss, obviously, maybe skipped out on this at the beginning. Nick Bosa and D Ford both out a lot of the year. Nick Bosa is elite. He gets quick pressure as much as any other player in the NFL. He's incredibly good, and they really missed him. And when he comes back next year, you'll see. I mean, he's going to make a huge difference. He's one of those top 3-5 edge defenders who not just matters, but like legitimately destroys other offenses just single-handedly. So he matters a lot. D Ford not so much. He's kind of trash, but he does at least provide a little bit as a situational pass rusher. I will give. So combined with a lot of, again, talent around him, if everyone's healthy next year, I think they'd be fine. Javon Kinla, first-round pick. Not as good as DeForest Buckner. Not as good as other rookie defensive linemen either. Such like Devon Hamilton for the Jags was an example of someone who was just straight up better. But he did show enough for me to not think the pick was a complete waste. Am I super excited about his future? No, especially because his whole thing was he was supposed to be so athletically gifted. He was going to be able to dominate NFL defenders even without technique, and that definitely didn't happen outside of players like Mason Cole or Austin Blythe, other centers in his division who are just bad and notably struggle with NFL athleticism. So am I super excited about Javon Kinla? No, but do I think he belongs on the NFL defensive line again? Probably. So yeah, that's our defensive lineman. Kevin Givens and Darion Daniels, also guys who played. Kevin Givens actually I thought showed a little bit that he could potentially be a player who makes some plays, but I'm not super excited about him either. And Darion Daniels is just whatever. So, yeah, that's their defensive front. I should mention, too, Alex Barrett, Jordan Willis, edge defenders. Alex Barrett, I thought, did actually some okay things, surprisingly, when he was in. Now, he didn't play a ton of snaps, and when he was playing, it wasn't against the greatest competition, but I did think he at least showed enough to make me curious about him going next year. Jordan Willis, they claimed from the Jets, whatever. Bengals, Jets. Either way, he wasn't good enough to play for those teams, and there's a reason for that. Now, is he awful? No, and I can see why they keep him around as a super depth guy, but should he be playing meaningful snaps? No. So the second level, best in the league probably there, and that's still true this year going forward. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, both outstanding, especially Fred Warner, who is actually incredible how good that guy is, and that's in all phases of the game, sideline, gets the run, gets the pass, everything. He is everything you could really ask for, and I really do think he's going to be the next Bobby Wagner for the next 5-7 years, and I don't really have a lot of caution saying that. Dre Greenlaw too, though. Dre Greenlaw is already, I think, is better than a lot of guys that made like the Pro Bowl roster / the All-Pro team linebacker. He's really, really good. And now even continued this year without all the support in front of him, which is why like they're seeing him and a guy like Solomon Thomas. Like I said, Solomon Thomas just sucks without great guys around him. Whereas Dre Greenlaw this year, despite not having a dominant front like he did his rookie year, was still really good. So they're set at linebacker. They even fleeced the Saints by trading K'Wan Alexander for whatever any pick is fleecing for them, because Dre Greenlaw, again, just way better than him. K'Wan Alexander makes too many mistakes to really be a relevant defender. So yeah, they're set at the second level, and even their backup guys. I mean, Azeez Al-Shaair did okay when he was forced into snaps later in the year, and Demetrius Flanagan fouls, and Mark Nziacha, while way more special teams players, I do think they could at least function for a team and in small number of snaps. So they're doing just fine at the second level. So then you talk about the secondary, and it's been pretty well publicized at this point that they don't even have like a corner on roster next year. Or I think maybe they have one or two, but listen, if they bring back any of the guys that are on roster, they're fine, because Emmanuel Mosley, Richard Sherman, although he's definitely gone, and Jason Verretta were all outstanding this year. I think Emmanuel Mosley is really underrated. I think he's a bigger part of the defense. He made the Super Bowl 2 years ago than people want to admit, and while he did have one rough game this year, right, against Devontae Adams, A, that's Devontae Adams, B, he didn't even do that bad. I think that was just some unlucky contested catch stuff. And see, that guy, I'm telling you, he's really, really good. And whoever gets him in free agency is getting one of the better corners in the NFL for sure. Richard Sherman, same thing, obviously to an even higher level. Now, he's not coming back for sure. They are going to miss him. But Jason Verretta, who I would expect to come back, given the 49ers are the one who gave him a chance, he played every bit as good, really, as either of those two guys did over the last couple of years. And while his injury situation, again, well documented, probably not going to last, you never know something like that, and well worth whatever contract I would expect that he gets to bring back, because if he's healthy, you got a pretty much elite guy at corner. So then other guys, Trent Williams, I actually feel really strongly about him in the slot too. He's one of the top 3-4 slot corners in the NFL for sure, maybe even higher than that off the top of my head. And while he faced injuries too this year that really hurt them, if he comes back and he stays healthy, then you're talking about an elite secondary, any combination of those 4 guys that I just mentioned. Other than that, though, they're pretty lacking. Jamar Taylor played a lot in the slot for him. He's bad, and at this point, he's just too old, I think, to function on an NFL field. Hello, Witherspoon is horrible, and while he can do an okay job against these like big, stiff receivers on the outside, so can a lot of guys, basically, and as a second-round pick or whatever he was, he's clearly not worth it. And how long is he going to be in the NFL? We'll see. But I don't think there's any real hope for him as a again, relevant defender going forward. Dante Johnson, kind of same thing. He's a little bit better, I would probably argue, but neither of them are players that I think you really care about as far as roster building is concerned. At safety, they did regress some, and when I say regress, again, I think they're the same players they always were. They just weren't playing behind such a dominant defensive front. And Jimmy Ward, he's fine as a free safety, but that's kind of it. He's not a huge playmaker. He doesn't have huge range. He's just fine. He's disciplined, and I would take him as my team safety, but I'm not super excited about it. And Jaquiski Tartt, actually fairly similar. A little bit more risk-heavy play style, but not a guy who is an offensive team I'm worried about fucking with my game plan at all. So yeah, overall on the defense, if they stay healthy and bring back a lot of guys, they're going to be great again. I don't think that's going to happen though. So you're probably looking at need to get better, just better interior defenders. Oh, I kind of skipped over DJ Jones, who's one of the main snap guys on the defensive interior. He sucks. He's really, really, really bad, and he gets bullied all the time. So giving him snaps is a real issue too. And from the rumblings, I think they think he's good, and they're just wrong. So we'll see how that happens. But they really need help on the defensive interior. If their edges stay healthy next year, they bring back the guys, are going to be fine. But every one of them has injury problems, so, is that going to happen? Maybe not. At the second level, they're fine, and with the corners, it's just with everyone being a free agent, it's hard to say, but if they bring back any number of those guys, I think they're going to be okay. So, yeah, the 49ers going in the offseason, we'll see. They got a chance to be elite again, though, next year right away for sure, but it mainly comes down to the quarterback.